Hello, and welcome to another edition of Just 5 Minutes in Acts. I'm Clay Brown, Associate Pastor for Equipping Ministries at Memorial Drive Presbyterian Church, Houston, Texas. Today's passage continues our look at the expansion of the Christian good news to the non-Jewish world. It's Acts chapter 10, verses 34 through 48. Now the key verses for us, verse 34, and then verses 44 through 47. Let me read them from the New Living Translation. Verse 34. Then Peter replied, I see very clearly that God shows no favoritism. Then verses 44 through 47. Even as Peter was saying these things, the Holy Spirit fell upon all who were listening to the message. The Jewish believers who came with Peter were amazed that the gift of the Holy Spirit had been poured out on the Gentiles too, for they heard them speaking in other tongues and praising God. Then Peter asked, Can anyone object to their being baptized, now that they have received the Holy Spirit just as we did? Here's our study method. We're going to look at one thought from these verses and then one implication of that thought. And by implication, I simply mean if the thought's on target, then here's what it may mean in your life and mine. And by the way, if you have questions or comments about any of this, email me at cbrown@mdpc.org. And please subscribe to this channel. Pass along these studies to your friends or even your enemies. So, what's the one thought here? We're dealing with an enthusiastic God. He wants all peoples to know about the good news of his Son Jesus. In fact, God is so excited that he sends the Spirit upon these gathered Gentiles before Peter can even finish what he's saying. In the passage, it all clicks for Peter as he starts to speak. I get it, he says, that God doesn't show favoritism to any person or group. Now, probably most of the public addresses in the book of Acts are executive summaries. That was done in the ancient world a lot. You just didn't have that much stuff to write on, and so you summarize. Peter starts, and it's a great gospel summary, but he's just not that good. And truth be told, neither am I. My efforts are sometimes pretty abysmal. But as Peter gets going, the Holy Spirit chooses that moment to enter the lives of all of the non-Jewish new believers in Cornelius' house. God is saying, it's time to cut to the chase, Peter. I'm ready to get this movement going out to the world. Fortunately, Peter recognizes what's going on, what God is up to. Can anyone legitimately object to these people being baptized, he asks. Of course not. Let's go. All right, what's one implication of this thought? It's not a bad thing to be reminded of who's really at work when we share the good news of Jesus. We can and should talk about Jesus, but the Holy Spirit is the evangelist with a capital E. If you buy that implication, then a couple of things at least naturally follow. First, God is working behind the scenes in ways we just don't realize until he chooses to reveal them. It's a really good possibility God is active in the lives of people we're in connection with in ways we just can't fathom, even today. And that should always be our presumption as we try to figure out how to love the people in our orbit. God is doing something. Always. Second, if the Spirit is the true evangelist, then the pressure's off us. I don't have to worry about saying the exact right thing or doing the exact right deed and so on. The Spirit's work is so much more powerful and effective than anything I can think of. So let's trust him. Go with where he leads. Watch doors open and don't get hung up on trying to do it just the right way. But rather we trust the Spirit for his wisdom and insight. He's the evangelist. We're just the go-betweens, and we get to see God at work. Well, that's enough for now. Thanks. God bless. And see you next time for Just 5 Minutes in Acts.